This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 42 of Retired Racehorse Radio on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Casual Products. Retired Racehorse Radio is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse. Brought to you in cooperation with the Retired Racehorse Project and New Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program.
On today's show, we talk with Kim Weir from the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation to get a recap of their first ever virtual TRF Blackburn Horse Show and how their program not only offers sanctuary for retired racers, but also offers a second chance for inmates. What pairs perfect with a thoroughbred? Well, bourbon, of course. We chat with Alice Peterson from Pinhook Bourbons and how racehorses have inspired their spirits. Leandra joins us with another hot training tip and brings us our Adoptable Horse of the Week, so stay tuned.
And they're off on Retired Racehorse Radio, the podcast that is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse.
This is Jamie Jennings in Norman, Oklahoma.
And this is Joy Hills from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and you're listening to Retired Racehorse Radio.
I'm so excited, Joy. You have found a guest that puts the two best things on the planet together. Bourbon, or at least alcohol, bourbon and horses. I mean, come on, like what's better than that?
I know. I'm so excited for it. I mean, who knew that early Christmas shopping would get us the perfect guest for today? So definitely a great thing to have. And then I'm also excited that we're going to be talking with the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. I mean, they were doing some cool stuff this week. It's just going to be a good show. I'm so excited for it. But before we get to all of our guests, how's your life? I feel like it's been forever since we've talked.
I know. My life has been a little bit crazy. I had some health problems with a family member and then had just everybody kind of my dad was visiting and had some health problems. So everybody came to visit like me while he was here because he was in the hospital. And so like everybody was here and it was my birthday and like that was awkward. And like all I've been trying to do is just go outside and ride. And our weather has been perfect and amazing. And it's like almost 80 degrees today. And apparently in like 5 days, we're going to have snow. So it's like,
welcome to the Midwest, girl. It's colic season.
Colic season. I know. I better go out and start prepping. I got to get the blankets down. I'm not prepped for this, Joy. I'm not ready.
I know. You'll get adjusted. I mean, you're still kind of new to Oklahoma, but once you start getting that Midwest vibe going, you get your blankets clean in the early spring. They're set to go in your little box. You'll get the groove. You'll get there.
They're all prepped and ready. They're just sometimes like in the hayloft and so I have to like get a ladder and climb up there and above the Tagra. It's a big mess. There's probably spiders everywhere. There's dust everywhere.
It's best to not overthink it. And you're just like, okay, just got to make sure no one gets rain rot, no one gets cold, and you're going to be fine. You just got to go in with that like warlike mentality of I just got to get it done.
You're right. I need to do it. But then here's the dilemma that I have is that I love this one particular type of blanket. And so I bought every horse this blanket. And so now I have, of the 8 horses, I have 8 of these blankets. And
Did you label them, Jamie?
They're exactly the same color and they're all different sizes.
You didn't write their name on the tag?
I wrote their name on the inside, but that's hard to see. And
but then you sold a bunch of horses since last winter.
I know. So now I got to figure out whose Rocket fits and whose Groot's going to fit and all this stuff. Yeah, it's a total mess. So I've got a lot of work to do trying to prep for the upcoming season.
You just gotta be like me. I mean, I have all my horses color coordinated. Each has a designated color, so I don't get confused because I don't have time for that. It's already bad enough trying to find a black horse at night. She has to be sheeted and you're just trying to find what's going on. But then you have a gelding who kind of has a crush on you. So he's following you around and breathing heavy on your neck. And you're just like, he's weird. He's a weird dude. And then my other horses, it's a lot of running around because, up in Michigan, it gets dark by the time you wake up and stays dark.
All day, huh?
So it's great we have a bourbon person on because seasonal depression is upon us. But before we get to that, it's going to be a really good show today. Before we just want to hear our sponsor, Kentucky Performance Products.
The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Feeding your horse starch-laden grains can lead to colic, laminitis, and metabolic disease. Today, nutritionists are recommending the use of high-quality fat to provide healthy calories. Fat is an extraordinary energy source. It's readily utilized by the horse and contains more than 2 times the calories of starchy grains. Replacing grain with a high-quality fat supplement reduces a horse's risk of developing health problems. Equijewel Stabilized Rice Bran is an excellent fat supplement. It contains a balanced calcium to phosphorus ratio and won't cause mineral imbalances when added to the diet. Its all-natural ingredients are high in healthy fat and fiber. And best of all, horses fueled by Equijewel stay calmer and more focused on the job at hand. When you need to add healthy calories to your horse's diet, choose Equijewel. To learn more, visit Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
Well, we have Kim Weir coming on. She's the Director of Major Gifts and Planned Giving from the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. And we've had her on before, so you'll probably recognize the name, but they just completed their first ever virtual TRF Blackburn 2020 Horse Show. And she's coming on to chat with us about that today. Welcome to the show, Kim.
It is such a pleasure to be here, Joy. Thanks so much.
Of course, of course. So you've done this Blackburn Horse Show before. Tell our listeners a little bit about what that has been traditionally.
Well, sure. So I did. This is actually something that we started last year at the horse show, using the play on the word horse show. Now, this audience knows horse shows very well. I always, for those inexperienced, and even probably more importantly, those who do know horse shows, have to say this is a horse show unlike any other. When you're holding a horse show in a prison, it's just going to be different. Last year, we did this to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our TRF Second Chances program at Blackburn. And it was a wonderful opportunity to bring the public in to the gates at Blackburn and to see the men and the horses together and to watch them performing a horse handling exhibition, quizzing them on their anatomy knowledge, their equine knowledge, and doing it all live like a horse show. And this is what we did last year. It was November 6th last year. It was really fun. It was a beautiful day. It was a huge undertaking, and it takes extraordinary partnership with our colleagues and our partners at Blackburn Correctional Complex to do it. It was amazing that it was able to happen, but it was great, and we loved it, and it was the kind of thing that we thought we would then do every year forever because it was so successful. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work, but it was well worth it in terms of outcomes, which we can chat about in a minute or two. But then, as we all know, everything we thought we were going to do in 2020 didn't quite turn out the way we thought it would. And it was probably about May that we realized this year was not going to be like last year. And so that's when the beginning of what we ended up doing began.
So, and what was, I mean, obviously with everything going on, it's been so unpredictable. Everything has kind of gone this virtual route. How have you had to plan for a virtual show in this case? How does that work with your Second Chance program, and how does it work with the correctional facility? Was this something that was easy to do? Like everyone got together real quick, or did it take a lot of brainstorming?
Well, it was a bit of an alchemy of things that came together. I mean, the fact is we have had a tremendous, jumping back to how you plan things like that, which is the focus of your question. This is definitely, I'll say, the first truly virtual event I have planned. This is the year that everybody has done a virtual event, but we at the TRF have done a number of events all summer, but we've managed to kind of skirt virtual. We've been able to include some element of actual until now. So, I'm actually realizing that today, being the day after the show, I've now officially, checked the box. I have my own virtual event badge that I have earned. But how we got there, it was that it's kind of a mix of factors. And the main thing is that we were so committed to doing it again this year. And this is where I will come back, maybe do a moment of why we were so committed. This event last year, this event this year, neither were intended as the traditional fundraiser goal. I mean, there's always, we all know when we're in the world of nonprofits and charities, and especially thoroughbred charities, we are always looking to raise money. These horses do nothing but eat money for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But there are events we do that are not for fundraising, but they are for education and awareness raising. And that's what the Blackburn Horse Show was last year. And that's why we were so committed to doing it this year, because things happened after last year's horse show that were basically game changers, for lack of a better word. The crux of it being, by opening the gates of Blackburn and bringing the public in, we brought employers in for the first time in a significant way. Now, not to say that employers hadn't been in and farm managers hadn't been into Blackburn over 20 years. Lots of people had been to see the program. But to bring them in for a show, for a performance, for a demonstration, was in the whole tone and having all of the, VIPs in the mayor's office and all of the fanfare. I'm not saying that changed anything, but it did elevate the experience. And what came out of that was employers saying, wow, these men know things. These men are learning skills they could use on my farm today. And it was a whole combination of things, which is, again, maybe conversation for another day. But the fact is, it actually not only turned the light bulb on, but then as we got into the spring, even though it was the spring that we were all getting shut in our houses, at the same time that the world was shutting down, we had men getting ready to leave Blackburn, and we had employers waiting for them. We ended up organizing Zoom calls with several of the men with their ultimate employers, a farm called Spy Coast in Lexington. And these things were arranged. It had never been done before. None of this had happened, arranging an interview by Zoom for an inmate with an employer. But it all was happening in, say, May, April timeframe. And ultimately, these guys were both offered jobs. The two that interviewed were both offered jobs before they'd even been released. One of them didn't actually make parole, but he's still there, and we expect that he will one day get out, and he has that job offer. The second was released, and he walked out the door carrying his uniform for the job he started the next day at Spy Coast. He was featured in the horse show last night, if you watched, Joy. So these things were happening in the same time frame that we were holding our breath thinking, we've got to do the horse show again this year. We've got to do the horse show again this year. So realizing by the time that Mr. Tucker actually walked out, it was actually July 6th that he was released, and he started at Spy Coast on July 7th. By then, it was just clear that no one really, frankly, in their right mind was going to even want to go to a horse show at a prison, even if we could. And at this point, the prisons had been all in lockdown and not being able to have anybody in them. I mean, we knew the world we were living in at that point. So I would actually say that, to your question about the planning, we didn't really start planning it in some ways. This is going to sound kind of crazy, until Mr. Tucker started at Spy Coast, because at that point it was just like, we have to do something. It doesn't really matter that we're going to overcome a lot of obstacles, that we're going to need to reinvent everything we did last year, because this story is too good to not tell. The key ingredient here, like we all know when we do events, because no one does anything alone in this world, is that you always are working in partnership. And we just could not have a better, more supportive, more engaged partner than we do with the Blackburn Correctional Complex, and that's starting from the warden, but all the way up through Kentucky Corrections. They're proud of their program, which is great, but they're also, it's one thing to be proud of it. It's another thing to have to deal with things we had to ask them, which is, at the end of the day, it's the approval to film the men. I mean, it's a simple deal, and it's the go, no go of whether you could do the horse show that we presented last night. If you can't film the guys, then you've got nothing. And that's not easy to accomplish, but there's a will there, and the will was there because of the success story that we had. So I guess there's a bit of a long rambled answer to you, as I tend to do. We were more driven by the fact that we needed to do it, and then we sort of figured the rest out. That was actually not the hard part. The hard part was really waiting to see if the prison system would allow us to film. And we got that go ahead probably in the middle of August. So,
oh, wow. So very quick turnaround for planning.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the interesting thing for your audience is that, like, we, and I don't know that this is always true. I don't know that there's really anything like planning a horse show in a prison. I'm not sure this will transfer to anything in my life either. But once we had the approval, there were parts of it, I would say, it's actually weirdly easier, because once you start, you can get it done. We were done with filming. Our goal was to be done by the end of September, and we were. And then we sort of had 3 weeks to do the editing of the show piece itself. One more thing I'd say, and I know it was way too long an answer for you, but the key is that once you decide you're going to go virtual, and I'm sure lots of your audience have actually already been through this, and I'm going to sound like the novice here that I am, but the beauty of virtual is you actually get to have everybody you ever possibly wanted in the show, which never happens when you're trying to get somebody to a certain place at a certain time on a certain date when everyone's so busy and they've got 10 other conflicts. But this was sort of the ask no one could say no to, because, if we wanted them to speak, we just needed to track them down and film them. So that part was kind of liberating in a pretty wonderful way. So anyway, it's been an adventure, and it was just yesterday. So you're kind of getting me in the decompression phase.
Yeah. Well, it was such a fun thing for me to watch. I tuned in yesterday and this was held on the 20th of October. So a couple days actually from when this will be released, but it was such a neat thing. And what if anyone doesn't know what the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation does, they offer a sanctuary to thoroughbreds who aren't really set for that second career, that athletic career, but they give this space where they still have a job, still are cared for their entire life. And that's something that's very unique. And we're extremely grateful on the show that that's something that's offered, because they're still offering these second chances for these prison inmates as well to work with them. But it was so neat to hear how many of these guys are looking at second jobs, another opportunity, their own second chance coming out of the prison. Hearing the employers that you mentioned talk about on your show too, that we have a workforce shortage, and you guys are making that call. You're saying, hey, we hear you. We have an issue here that we want to offer this second chance. We can partner. And I think that was really beautiful. You offered this as a global event to get as many people as possible to see your story. Now, have you seen or even gotten comments of, more people wanting to be involved with this now that it's been virtual, getting the story out more, seeing more shares? Have you seen anything like that?
Well, it is. We're actually, as you and I are talking, we're about to hit the 24-hour mark since the event, the live event took place. And like the other interesting thing about even planning a virtual event is just the fact you get to think about the fact that the event lives on forever, which is wonderful. So you're not like, oh, well, how many people were there that day? Last year we had 140 people at the horse show, and we will never have more than 140 people. Last night we had our peak concurrent viewers was 460, but our unique viewers was 650. And now we've had like 2.2 thousand views of the show since then. So I don't know what all those numbers, really mean. They all have different meanings, I'm sure, to folks who follow analytics, but it is a really interesting thing to think about, that like that event will now live on. One of our major donors, who was a sponsor of the show last night, Mary West, are very dear and much appreciated supporters of the TRF. And I was in touch with Mary West today. She wasn't able to watch the show live last night. She had another commitment. So she's watching it sometime this afternoon. I've been thinking about her, like waiting to get a note from her when she has watched it. So it's just to your question. Yes, we're really gratified by the engagement we had during the event. With as the person who's sort of talking into the camera, it was just wonderful to see comments and voices, and some that I knew saying shout outs, and lots of people that I didn't know. There was a sense of engagement and community that was what we had hoped to create. But we know that the long-term goal, and well, not even that long term, the goal of that event is the what happens next. It is your question. Do you get the engagement is the key. Donations are lovely. We've actually had, dollars are coming in. People are buying a bale of hay or a bag of grain, and that's lovely. But we're much more interested in folks sharing it, as you point out, like how to, measuring that and getting the reach, because it's what we saw last year, is that we ended up, if what we had, it's almost like using a math equation. We had 140 people at the event last year, and X number of employers were there, and X number of jobs were offered a result of that. Well, then if this year we have, let's say, 2,000 people like watching it, what's possible? It's just very exciting, and it is frankly too soon for me to give you anything tangible. But the goal is, that's where I'm very excited about where will it go next? Because we are national, as you know, and you just, by the way, Joy, thank you for that totally perfect capturing of who we are and what we do. It's so nice for me to hear. I love doing it, but I really love hearing it. And you clearly have completely embraced our mission. And I just applaud you for knowing your subject so well. But thank you for that. But in our national work, we have 7 prison programs across the United States. We actually have a brand new 8th program that sort of was mentioned in the final part of the show last night, which is fine. We're happy to sort of talk about it generally, but we haven't actually been able to announce this new program in Florida due to COVID. So we have people, those folks who are out there thinking about the program and thinking, wow, like that really works. My equine community needs qualified employees, or, people. I really do think that is where I want people to be thinking, oh, reach out to us. And we have prisons across the country, from California to New York to Florida. I mean, it's not to say that we necessarily have one where you live specifically, but we, these men and women, because it's men and women in our program, they're qualified. And if there's a need, I think, they're going to go where the opportunities are. So, I'd love to chat with you 6 months from now, Joy, to say, like, how can I measure what we got back? Right now, we've gotten a lot of love, which is very much appreciated. There's a lot of lot of effort and energy that goes into something like that. And to hear people have appreciated it and enjoyed it, I do think the short-term goal for me was that everyone just feels a little better about the world when you see what
it was definitely a positive light on my day during such a crazy 2020 year, but it really brought, some happiness into my heart to see that and see the honest, genuine answers from all the inmates who participated, and to see that these horses have such an amazing second career. When a lot of people wouldn't even look twice at them, you saw the opportunity for them. And, that's the beauty of it all. Horses changing lives. That's what we're about on the show.
I love that. I love that.
So, Kim, if people want to find out more about the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, or even how to view the Blackburn 2020 Horse Show, where can they find that?
Sure thing. Well, I would love for folks to come visit us on our website. And the website is trfinc.org. And, that's like lots of good information on there. But I will say that there is a lot of information about this horse show, including the easy link to the YouTube recorded of the live event. It's all on the event page. So I would also just encourage folks to go to the events section and then look at this event that happened on October 20th, because it'll live there forever. And it has the opportunity, and it has more than just the video. It has the button to volunteer with us, which is what I'm hoping we're going to see a big spike in. There's also a button to send us your thoughts. What did you feel about the event? What are ideas that it inspired? Who are people you think we should talk to? There's obviously always going to be the button where you can buy a bale of hay or a bag of grain, because we always are grateful for those gifts. But that event page, is sort of simple as it sounds, is really going to remain the hub for what you saw last night and what, if you'd like to see it. I would also say that our YouTube, this has been one of our COVID projects, which, like the many things, some people clean their closets. I worked on our YouTube channel. We have a lot. There's always been a lot of video, just like we showed last night. It's such a great way to convey information without just, I like talking, and you clearly do because you're a great host. We all digest information differently when we see it. And so there have been some great videos captured of our programs all across the country for a long time. They're now quite reasonably well organized, I would say, on our YouTube channel. So that might just also be a kind of a fun place to send your audiences, just to look up the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation YouTube channel. Things are organized there by the Second Chances program, their sanctuary farms. There's a lot there, and that's just another way to learn more about us and see our horses. And that is, of course, what brings us all together. Is they're all just gorgeous and adorable, and steal the show. And they definitely stole the show last night too. The guys did a pretty good job, but when
it's always about the horses at the end of the day.
Oh my goodness, it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for coming on the show today. We'll make sure to have links to all this, and we'll be following up with you soon to see how this has affected you guys and the growth you're going to get out of it.
Well, I'd love to keep you posted, and I so appreciate your time and having the chance to chat today. Thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Cashel Company helps you enjoy the ride with their full line of trail bags and tush cushions. From kennel bags to horn bags and everything in between, comfort and convenience on the trail is what Cashel does best. To stay up to date with the latest products and news, follow Cashel Company on Facebook and Instagram. And to find their products, visit an authorized dealer or visit cashelcompany.com. That's cashelcompany.com. Joy, it's time to talk about two of my favorite things in the world, which is booze and racehorses and how they tie together. So we have Alice Peterson on the line. She is with Pinhook Bourbon. She's the CEO of Pinhook Bourbon. And Alice, thank you so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So first of all, I guess with bourbon and racehorses, you must be in the state of Kentucky somewhere.
Well, I would love to say that were the case. I am a huge fan of Kentucky. I got married there 15 years ago and think it's one of the best places in the world. But our business is actually based in New York. But if you are going to be making bourbon, you better make sure your operations are in Kentucky. There's a reason why it's known for that wonderful export. And so while I'm in New York and many of our business folks are here, all of our operations are based in Frankfurt at the wonderful Castle and Key Distillery there.
Okay, gotcha. So you're those New York racers we hear so much about.
Yeah. We Belmont, as opposed to Keeneland.
Exactly. Gotcha. We'll forgive that. We'll let that slide as long as the bourbon's made there. I know that because of the limestone in the ground, it makes for amazing bourbon, especially out of Frankfurt. So let's start with the Pinhook side of Pinhook bourbon. Do you guys actually pinhook racehorses?
We do not, but our very dear friends and partners at Bourbon Lane Stables do. And when we started kind of dipping our toe into what it meant to create, a wonderful bourbon, it was not lost on us the parallels between racehorsing and American whiskey. And at the time, we started by buying 20 barrels, and it was a pinhook, right? We were buying young bourbon, totally unproven. We knew about its, lineage or what its ingredients were, but we were relying on, our instinct and a little bit of luck to make sure that over time and with some patience, it would grow into something, worthy of being a champion, just like you would with a pinhooked horse.
Gotcha.
So we wanted to pay tribute to that. And that's where the name came from. And that's where all of the branding, sort of derives from and what we're trying to pay tribute to more than anything else.
I love it. And for those who maybe don't, are kind of new to the show, pinhooking in the horse world is to buy a young racehorse and raise it and then sell it at the next sale, hopefully for a profit. But also you're kind of in the business there, which is kind of sounds like what you guys are, which is in the business of bourbon and kind of dipping your toe in the racehorse world too a little bit with your friends. So tell us a little bit about Pinhook bourbon. I'm sorry. So let me tell you the truth here. I sat my husband down before the show and I said, hey, look who we're going to talk to. And his favorite thing on the planet is bourbon. So he actually went through, he's like, oh yeah, I got to try that one and that one and that one.
I was like making my list.
We'll connect after the show to make sure that we get him everything on his wish list.
Oh, look at that. You're going to make my Christmas here. He was like, oh yeah, Bourbon War sounds amazing and Bourbon Country. Now, but there is a tie between the names of your bourbons and horses. Talk about that.
So what Pinhook does a little bit differently than most the other folks who are in the wonderful world of whiskey is the traditional way to approach a brand is that you establish a flavor profile. And year in, year out, you are using the art of blending barrels to tie back to that flavor profile and make sure that every time someone picks up a bottle, it tastes exactly the same. Kind of like, Coca-Cola, right? I mean, that you know what you are going to get, you love what you're going to get, and, you're never let down on that. Our one of our co-founders, Sean Joseph, actually comes from the world of wine, and wine takes a very different approach. So wine, it sort of recognizes that they're working with a crop, that crop is going to vary year by year based on all sorts of different factors in terms of, what was going on with the soil and what was going on with the weather. And then sort of takes that harvest and makes the very best wine that it can for a particular vintage. And so we've borrowed that approach with the sort of idea that barrels are a natural product too. There are only 3 ingredients that go into bourbon or rye, which are grains, yeast, and water. And a lot of the flavor comes through the process of aging, which is all about weather and placement in the warehouse and, what happens inside this natural barrel that's made out of, American oak tree. So that's all to say that we are every year releasing new vintages, a set of expressions, and that with those, we are looking to release the very best bourbon or the very best rye, which isn't necessarily the very same as what has come the year before. We create a blend that we think expresses the very best attributes of the set of barrels we have at our disposal, and then we set a proof that we think really brings that blend to life. And so what we needed was a way to denote those vintages. And sure, you can say, the 2020, flagship bourbon.
That's not
but we decided we wanted to go a step further. That's right. So instead, we dedicate every crop of barrels, every set of barrels that were filled, around the same time, that have the same recipe, which is called a mash bill. And we dedicate those to an up and coming thoroughbred racehorse, a real horse that is just, may often have been a pinhook and is just starting on his or her career at the track. So, for instance, you mentioned Bourbon War. Bourbon War is an incredible horse that was in the field for both the Preakness and the Belmont last year. And before we knew that was going to be the case, had chosen him to represent a set of barrels that are on the vertical, that are, the foundation of the vertical series that we
You did
do
that
in Bourbon.
You named him Bourbon. You named
it
before you even knew how successful he was going to be?
Yes.
Okay, that's lucky.
And we don't always get so lucky, right? I mean, there's our first filly ever to be on a bottle of Pinhook is named Bohemian Bourbon. She raced yesterday at Belmont. And, she's doing great. She came in second. But, you aren't reading about her on the front pages today. And so, they all take different twists and turns. And we've had some that needed to be retired because they got injured. But it's really trying to acknowledge that some of what we do is about, placing a bet. Yeah. And that we're trying to bring out the fact that there is a lot of character to be had in American whiskey, and that, Pinhook is not Pinhook, and that what we're committed to is creating the very best thing that we can put in the bottle year after year. So when you're buying our brand, you are expecting a level of quality, and you're excited and, trying it with curiosity about what that means with any given vintage.
I got to read from the Bourbon War page on your Facebook because this is making me hungry, not just thirsty. It says, the straight bourbon whiskey has a bright nose of tropical fruit, butterscotch, and cedar, leading to a rich and vibrant palate of dried fig, cocoa, roasted peanut, and clove. That sounds amazing.
I know, right? It should be be a dessert. Yeah. I wish that I were responsible for those notes. I wish that I had a palate sophisticated enough to pick out those notes. And as a result, I sometimes make fun of our incredible, taster blender co-founder, Sean Josephs, who is my partner in crime, when he creates those. But I mean, that all just plays to how much complexity there is in bourbon. And what I've come to appreciate is, and this is exactly the same thing for wine, we all have the ability to taste, just as well as one another. I think it's almost like language, though, where we may or may not have the vocabulary to describe what we're tasting. So there are some people who, do the study and do the work to develop that vocabulary and who are able to talk about it in that way. And there are other people who are able to taste it and say, this is very interesting and I really enjoy it and it makes me want to take another sip, and that's equally good.
Okay, so you're not going, this smells like, has a taste, a bright nose of tangerine, preserved lemon, and brioche, which leads me to a deep and lush palate of dried papaya, toffee, cocoa, and almonds.
I like to think that on a good day, if you put all of those individual things in front of me, I'd be able to tell apart the papaya from the coffee, for instance, but I certainly can't pick some out of a bourbon. Now, maybe by the time I retire, I will have gotten there, and Sean is good in trying to, tutor me along the way. But I can drink something and say,
good.
Oh my, to me, it's about wanting more, right? So when you stick your nose in the glass, do you want to take a sip? When you take a sip, do you want to take another sip because you're trying to, sort of experience it again? And do you enjoy it, right? That's what counts. This is what I love about this, and I have not always been in the spirits business, this is meant to bring joy. And so whatever that means to you is absolutely perfect. The other thing is we really, I would say we're very much in what people would call, we try not to use this word that much, but craft, meaning we make small batches, and they're there are a lot of humans involved in crafting what's in the bottle. But we started on this journey long before the bourbon boom, and we have been very, very dedicated to the idea that this is meant to be accessible. Actually, Sean sort of grew up and cut his teeth on the hospitality business broadly defined as a sommelier. And part of what drew him to bourbon at the time, and this was in the mid 2000s, was that wine had a very high price point for quality, and that bourbon was every man, or I'd say every woman's drink. It was very hard to find a bottle that was certainly more than $100, but probably even more than $75, probably, in most cases, even more than $50. And so we've really stayed true to that price point because we don't want this to be this super refined special occasion, bottle that you keep under lock and key. We want this to be what you reach for to make your favorite cocktail every evening.
I love it.
But to be something that you're proud to put in front of, someone who does have the palate to write those kind of notes, right?
Yeah,
so really high quality, but in a really accessible kind of way.
Okay, so it's not $9,000 a bottle. Yeah,
No. If you see our everyday bourbon, which has an orange wax seal on it, and our everyday rye, which has a green wax seal on it, they're meant to be on the shelf and on the shelf anywhere, right? Not just at the finest spirit shop, but at Kroger for less than $40.
Oh, wow. That's a great deal.
I can have all this beautiful artwork on these bottles, just like showcased in my house. It's going to look expensive.
Yeah, but you're supposed to keep them full, Joy, if you display them. So I'm just going to keep them like.
Well, that's why you get doubles, Jamie. You keep one under the cabinet to drink.
Yes, because it will not exist, in a year or less, right? There'll be a new vintage. So we definitely are playing into the collectability. And yes, I mean, recently on our Instagram, which is the handles at Pinhook_Bourbon, people have been posting photos that they find in shops where, there's sort of this billboard of Pinhook. And, I a lot of Pinhook decor in my home. And we also wanted to kind of break with that tradition of like the short, stout, brown bottles that are meant to look like you pulled them out of your grandfather's closet, right? With this sort of faux old-fashioned writing. We used jockey silks as inspiration, with the idea that the reason that silks are bright and have those bold patterns on them is because before they're jumbotrons, how else were you going to see your horse on the back stretch?
Right.
So we have tall bottles with bright colors and bold shapes, and the hope is you walk into a liquor store or you walk into a bar and you could immediately spot it.
I love that. I love it. And one final question. We've run out of time. Each label is different with a different horse on it. Is that an actual drawing of the horse it's named for?
Absolutely. And we're really true to that. So, for instance, there is a horse, I'll sort of spill this. There's a horse that has just started racing called Hard Rye Guy, who will be on our 2021 Rye. And we are going to feature him running. I mean, most horses, seen at that size and going at that speed look relatively similar. We're not even attempting to create the art until we get a photo of him racing tomorrow at Keeneland.
Oh, he's running tomorrow.
And then we take that art and we give it to this incredible woman named Noli Novak, who is the portraitist for the Wall Street Journal, and usually is drawing, Warren Buffett and uses this incredible pen and ink technique that is essentially a series of dots and crosshatches. And so, the horse you see on the bottle is the actual horse whose stats are given there and represented based on a photograph that we've given, this artist who has built her entire career around really capturing a likeness. So that is something we take very seriously.
That is awesome. I love
it. I'm going to order like 4 bottles right now.
Yeah, we just
do it. You know what's really fun? We have launched this text to buy channel. So it can be kind of hard to hunt down a specific bottle of something. And so if you text the word Pinhook to 926-848, we have essentially personal shoppers who ask you what you're trying to find and will get a bottle for you of whatever it is and have that retailer just ship it to your home.
Okay, so that was my question was, can we get these shipped all over the country? The website is pinhookbourbon.com. And again, you can text to buy it, but is it in every store? And if it's not, can we go to your website and buy it?
So on our website, there are a series of, right on the homepage, you will see a set of online retailers who sell and ship very broadly. And if you go to the pages for an individual product and you click the button, you're able to use the text to buy service right from the website.
You can even find radiuses around your city and zip code and what bars and retail shops have it. You guys you're covering every end. You're going to take over the world. I'm really excited to
one Pinhook at a time, one up and coming horse at a time.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Alice, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh my gosh,
really
I feel
appreciate
like drinking some bourbon now.
It's that time of year.
It is. Well, good luck with your horse in the race tomorrow. We can't wait to hear more about it.
Thank you so much.
As it is customary to do, we like to invite Leandra Cooper from New Vocations Racehorse Adoption to come on the show. And we'd love to pick her brain because she sees how many thoroughbreds are currently at New Vocations in the Kentucky division, Leandra?
Well, in Kentucky, we have 30 horses in training. We have around 20 horses who are at our rehab barn. And then we have another 20 or so horses that are in some stage of turnout, whether it be 24/7 or whatnot. So I would say around, 70, 75 horses at any given time.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so fair to say that you see a lot of thoroughbreds coming in and out, maybe or maybe not. Some of them have some behavioral issues, and I have found out that a lot of the thoroughbreds that I have gotten off the track or I've seen off the track are not a lot of them. Some of them are food crazy. And when I say food crazy, like they get their food, they're pawing, they're mad, they're pinning their ears, you feed them, they finally start wolfing it down. Or if God forbid they can see another horse, they become aggressive to the other side of the stall. And, they're just super angry. How does New Vocations deal with that? How do y'all do that?
Well, I would say the way that they act with different sort of food situations, whether it's aggression or insecurity, it depends a lot, obviously, on the individual. So I could probably talk to a couple different situations, the way that we would handle that. So one, of course, is modifying the setting. So if you have a horse who just sees another one eating and they get really upset, all of our feeders are set at the same corner of their stall. And even if we have to use a ground feeder, we try to keep that pretty consistent so that hopefully they're not head-to-head. But you also have situations where one horse finishes before another, or they just are more concerned with what their neighbor is doing. So in those situations, you can still have those confrontations. But I would say step one is if you can avoid the situation by just modifying how you're feeding, whether it's in a ground feeder or switching which corner you feed, then you're doing pretty well by that. Because if you can get them into the mindset, of course, I've spoken to it before about sort of shifting the pattern, reprogramming the brain, then hopefully you'll have the best long-term results and you won't just have to modify forever and ever in order to make them happy. Because really, part of what you have to get down to is the source of it. Is it because they're worried about when their next meal is going to be? If on the track, that's probably not the situation. They eat a lot of food, but you just never know. So maybe that's a consideration is why could it be this way? How were they, if you can access how they were being fed previously, and maybe you can change some things, or, change things to make it different, or change things to make it more similar. So I would say sort of avoiding or addressing how they're fed is one big part of it. So say you can't change that, say you don't have the information and you're just trying to move forward, then the aggressive behavior, is one of the behaviors that they're demonstrating, whether it's putting the ears back, charging, that is an alpha move. So one thing that's really important with horses in a lot of different situations is reestablishing yourself or establishing yourself as the alpha. And so if you can work with a horse, if they're charging or they're really assertive about their space, if you can create distance with yourself, keep yourself safe, obviously, but teach them to, say, back away from you before they get grain, and you could start with treats, but just establish that pattern. And I try to do it on the ground anyway with horses, of just teaching them systematically to stop and back up. So even if you have a horse who's kind of stepping on your heels and you walk, I teach them stop, back up. So get out of my space, because you are always wanting to establish yourself because there's this herd mentality. You want to be the more alpha. And of course, doing that with as little confrontational aspects as you can. Like you don't want to fight the horse. Obviously, it's not going to work that well to your advantage because you're smaller. But behaviors where you are physically moving them out of your space are really effective. So working on that pattern of you're going to back up and then you're going to get your food, that can be really effective. Just make sure to use repetition, because that's how it's really going to make it concrete. You really have to sort of stick to a pattern to reinforce that and make sure it's a long withstanding pattern. So that can be really effective. And of course, if you need to have a rope on you or carry, I have this little short crop just to use the sound, if you're really worried about the situation, of course, always protect yourself. Make sure you're not putting yourself in a bad situation. You can work on things like backing up in a round pen or an open space at first. Don't throw yourself in the stall and put yourself at jeopardy. A lot of times I'll use a kind of growling sound as well. Maybe that's just for me mentally, but it's sort of just a vocal cue of again, you're sort of establishing yourself. I'm the alpha. You have to back away from my space, because that's what it's going to come down to. If they feel that they need to get that alpha to get to their food, and you need to make sure that you're at that level in the herd of saying, I know you want this food, but you also have to respect me, and that has to be first and foremost. So that is, I would say, one really good tip to start with. There are a lot of different things that you could do just depending on the different situations. I'm happy, of course, to be a resource to anybody who has different scenarios they want to bounce off. But I found a lot of times, if you can get them to just back out of the space, respect it, and then offer that, if you can repeat that, then that can be beneficial. As far as just that human-horse interaction piece, if it's horse to horse, you're dealing with a lot of different complicated variables. So I'll just leave that there as just one tip and say I'm happy to discuss with anybody who's having other issues.
Gotcha. I was telling Joy before the show when we were trying to figure this out, I got to build my own barn, which was really nice because in Arizona, when I lived there, you use mare motels. So it's just kind of pipe corrals, because you can't have a barn unless you have air conditioning, because it gets too hot. And so feeding time was always just a nightmare, because they would just fight with each other from one corral to the next. And so with this barn I built, we got a Morton barn done this time. And it's the bars down the walls in between so they can see each other. But at their feed tub, instead of having the bars where they could see each other, I put 2 feet of solid plank. Yeah. So when they go to their little bucket, everybody disappears. It's oh my God, it has made such a huge difference in just the management. Absolutely. Because again, I don't know what it is with food insecurity. Horses that have been hungry before are more likely to have some food related issues. So,
Absolutely. Well, and it's important, if you can, in situations like that, where you you can't go around each one of them and be like, you get in your corner, you get in your corner. I mean, more to you if you can, but always making sure that there's hay available, feeding hay before grain, so they're not all kind of like crazed and waiting. The anticipation is killing them. So throwing hay before grain, and then you can kind of trick them sometimes if you make kind of like a basket out of the hay, and you can dump some grain into the hay. So you can establish like your hay's always going to be here. And of course, like if you have nests, there are lots of different complicated variables and reasons why we can say this couldn't work. But if you have the right sort of setup to do that, throw hay first so that you know that they have a little stomach buffer. They're not starving. They have something. And you can sometimes just dump some grain into the little hay basket and sort of trick them that way, hopefully until you can establish a different routine or something. But, both good, plausible tips that you can use in a lot of different situations. But again, so many different variables to this, but I'm happy to be a resource if anybody needs to bounce ideas off of.
I love it. Thank you so much.
And from the back of the pack on the outside, Commanding Curve is taken second, but California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby.
And now it's time for the New Vocations Winner's Circle Adoptable Horse of the Week.
Well, now it's time to talk about our Winner's Circle Adoptable Horse of the Week, One More Whim, or Whim as you guys are calling him, is a 2018 gelding, 16 hands, dark bay. The adoption fee is a whopping $500. Oh my God. Tell us a little bit about Whim.
Well, this is a horse who is really special to me because I actually adopted out his dad, Sir Whimsy, a couple years ago when his dad had obviously done with his breeding career and was a gelding at that point and found a home through New Vocations as well. But One More Whim is, a great name in relation to how I know him because he's truly from the last crop of Sir Whimsy babies. And I adored his father. If you're going to talk about a thoroughbred who looks like he might have some warm blood look to him, like that was the horse. Elegant. He was a true gentleman through and through, and just a wonderful sporty prospect. And I see all of those same qualities in Whim, and One More Whim. And he didn't race. His connections just felt he wasn't going to be a great racehorse prospect. And One More Whim does have a sway back. He's not perfectly confirmation's not ideal, perfect textbook. But I will tell you, you really can't see those sway back under saddle. And if you watch the video, I think it would definitely surprise you, especially if people do judge the book by its cover, because he's a lovely mover and he has the sweetest personality. I think this is a really quality horse who's going to make a wonderful companion trail, low-level horse would be so wonderful for so many different people. Maybe not a high-level competitor, but heck, how many people are going to the Olympics? This is a really, really awesome. He's just a 2-year-old, so he's still, very much green prospect level, but just a wonderful, sweet baby horse who is going to make somebody a really, really lovely addition to their family.
So One More Whim. Yes, I looked at pictures and I was like, wow, he has a sway back. And the first thing I thought of, let me skip ahead because he's only 2 and you guys are tacked up like he's super chill riding around in the arena. But what I really thought of when I looked at he's kind of a broader sway back kind of dude. All I could think of was like, oh my God, this horse would be so comfortable bareback. It's like a natural
saddle
seat.
Doesn't move, even if you aren't bareback.
One of my best horses is swayed back. And I've had her since I was 5. And I can put anyone on her. She's so comfortable. She's just this lazy boy sofa. So I'm like, it's a little scary to look at if you've never had one. But honestly, I'm looking at him like he's cute. He's got the personality. If he can be a great husband horse someday, that's a diamond right there.
Yeah, you could go really far with him. Well, he's adorable. You can find him at horseadoption.com. His name is One More Whim. As always, Leandra, thank you for your amazing perspective. Who gets to talk to somebody that has 70 off the track thoroughbreds in their, in their day? That's amazing.
Just like a small barn. Yeah.
Yeah, tiny, small little thing. Well, thanks, Leandra. And where can people find you if they want to reach out and talk to you about food issues?
My email address, Leandra, Leandra, at horseadoption.com. You can also find my contact information on our website, newvocations.org or horseadoption.com. Either one, it's easy to find me. You could probably Google my number at this point, but please feel free to reach out if you have questions about anything.
All right. Thanks, Leandra. Have a great one.
Thanks, Leandra.
Thanks for having me.
You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on the website at retiredracehorseradio.com. Like us on Facebook, search for Retired Racehorse Radio, or we're also on Twitter, or at least my boss is, at Horse Radio.
Check out Jamie's Facebook page, Flyover Farm, Jamie Jennings, Certified Monty Roberts Instructor, or shoot her an email at jamie@horseradionetwork.com. You can shoot me an email at joy@horseradionetwork.com or find me on Instagram at joyhaquestion. If there's anyone you want to hear on the show, make sure you send them my way. Thanks so much to our sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products and Cashel Products. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com. Remember to set your goals high and love to learn from every ride.
And spay, neuter, and geld.
Bye, guys.